Graphs have been around for a long time, over 200 years. In 1801, Playfair is credited as the creator of some of today's common graphs, such as the bar graph and pie graph. Here we see his pie graph, showing the proportions of the Turkish Empire that lie in Europe, Africa and Asia in 1789. In his 1983 book, The Visual Display of Quantitative Data, Tufte describes Menard's graph of Napoleon's march to Moscow and back again as being one of the most famous and enduring visualizations of data. The graph clearly shows the decimation of Napoleon's army as he moves across Europe to Moscow and then back again to Paris. The graph is easy to read and memorable, both requirements of a good graph. Pie, bar, line and scatter graphs are still widely used today. For example, the scatter graph below shows the linear relationship in New Zealand between the weekly income earned and the number of hours worked in a week. Today we're seeing increased use of multiple graphs in the form of dashboards which show many little graphs at once, each of a different variable for one enterprise or person or region, and Tableau, which similarly show many little graphs, but here each of the same variable across many people or regions or enterprises. We're seeing graphs being overlaid on top of each other. And most importantly, we're seeing the use of web-based technologies where users can interact with graphs and can view changes in data over time. We're also seeing new types of static graphs, such as Hidalgo's tubular tree representation of the United Nations Human Development Indicator. Here, each branch of this graph represents the value of that index. Here we're looking at an indicator of the economy in the form of gross domestic product, GDP. We're looking at life expectancy and at education outcomes. The placing of the graph on the trunk of the tree shows its relative importance compared to the other indicators. Looking at Egypt's HDI over the 3 decades between 1975 to 2005, we can see that the economy has remained relatively static. However, education outcomes have improved and life expectancy has risen significantly. The OECD also have a similar indicator called the Better Life Index flower. However, here it is interactive, allowing the user to select the countries that they focus on and to choose from a set of indicators. Increasingly, graphs are dynamic, showing changes over time. Probably the most famous of these was created by Rosling, his Gapminder bubble graph. Let's have a look at it. Basically, this is an extension of a scatter plot, where the size of the point, the bubble, is proportional to the population in that country, and the colour of the bubble shows which region of the world that country resides in. Here it's Asia. The graph is interactive in that the user can select which indicator to show on the axis from a range of indicators, and can also choose which country or countries to focus on. It's dynamic in that it can be played over time. So let's look at GDP and life expectancy over the last century. We can see that both of these have grown for all countries of the world. But the blue countries, the African nations, are still lagging behind the other countries in the world. Most national statistics offices now make available on their website dynamic population pyramids, which similarly show how populations have changed over time. In the past, we would have had to have printed off individual population pyramids and compared them one by one. Let's have a look at a dynamic visualization of this. If I play this from before the Second World War through to the present day, we'll be able to see the blip here, which shows the dramatic decrease in the population of males during the war, followed by an increase in babies being born after the war, the baby boom, and then subsequent mini booms as the baby boomers move through their life. In addition, we can see the aging of the population, with the age structure becoming more and more cylindrical as we get through to the present day. What is the way of the future? It is possibly in terms of the integration of maps and graphs together, as we are increasingly being able to find the geographic location of the data that we have available to us. One tool that provides us a way of analysing this data is the Pennsylvania State University GeoVista software, which is free downloadable software. Let's have a look at how we can use this. This tool is preloaded with 2006 census data for one city in New Zealand, Auckland. Here we see a map of Auckland with all of the small regions, suburbs within the city, and alongside it we have star plots showing the proportion of children, the proportion of the elderly, and the proportion of the working age population in each region. So as we click on each geography, we can see this. The integration of the map with statistics is clearly shown when we add a tool. Here I've added a map in scatterplot matrix. So we still have maps of New Zealand. We have histograms showing the proportion of children in each region, proportion of the working age population, the proportion of the elderly. We have scatter plots, and each of these is still linked to the physical location on the map. This is a good tool for identifying an outlier, its physical location, and then being able to evaluate whether this is a real value that should be included in our data analysis or not. We can also add other tools to it. For example, we could add a cartogram. This is a tool which swells the area shown in accordance with the proportion. I'm showing here a cartogram for the proportion of children in each region. And we can clearly see that in the inner city of Auckland, very few children are living, but in the outer suburbs, the largest proportion of children reside. These are the sorts of tools that will be used more and more in the future. So we will continue to have creativity in graphics in the future. But what is of equal importance is how graphs are used in terms of decision making. That will be the subject of the next video. Thank you.